I nearly let a silent thief rob a quarter of my savings. And the rescue came from one coin that everyone said was way too risky to touch. Picture this, it's April 2020. I'm hunched over my laptop in sweatpants that definitely needed a wash, doom scrolling through pandemic headlines while the world feels like it's been flipped upside down. There were stores shutting, toilet paper is the new gold, and the US dollar, my supposedly safe pile of cash, is quietly bleeding value. Now in the middle of all of that mess, I have a 100 grand I've saved for a home deposit. And every headline says, play it safe. But safe suddenly looks a lot like watching my money shrink. Now, out of sheer stubbornness and a dash of curiosity, I decide to test two completely different shelters. Shiny, centuries-old gold on one hand, and a controversial digital token called XRP on the other. Back then, XRP was limping along at roughly 18 cents. People called it dead, slow, or my personal favorite, a lawsuit waiting to happen. Gold, meanwhile, had history on its side. It was sitting at around $1,730 an ounce, radiating that kind of polished, royal kind of treasury vibe. So I split my imaginary 100 grand buy button into two mental scenarios. First, I slide the entire stack into gold, neatly stacking 58 kind of glimmering ounces into a vault. Second, in a kind of parallel universe, I hit buy on 546,149 XRP tokens. And just for kicks, I also leave a third version of myself holding straight up cash, because we all know a friend who likes to wait for clarity. Fast forward 5 years, I open the time machine dashboard and almost spit out my coffee. Scenario 3, the leave it under the mattress kind of plan, looks awful, right? Thanks to nearly 25% inflation, my crisp 2020 Benjamin bills only buy about 75 grand's worth of 2025 groceries, rent, and streaming subscriptions. Now my cash, it shrank without doing anything wrong. Just, I'm like leaving ice cream on the sidewalk and maybe wondering why it melted, right? Scenario 1, my kind of regal gold bars, actually doubled in value. Now, at today's current spot price of around $3,495 an ounce, right? That kind of stash clocked in around $202,000. It's not terrible. I mean, who's complaining about doubling their money, right? But then I look down the kind of hall at scenario 2, and XRP has morphed into the elephant in the room, an elephant made of digital neon signs flashing 10 bagger. Now, at roughly $2.07 a token at the point of recording, my digital kind of fling from 2020 is now worth a staggering $1.13 million. Yeah, 7 figures from a coin that mainstream pundits once compared to a speed-limited tractor on the crypto highway. And that is just today's snapshot. If I scroll back 3 months to January of 2024, when XRP spiked to $3.34, the number rockets to $1.82 million. That's nearly 700 grand more than my current balance and 9 times higher than the gold play, right? Suddenly my risky pick looks like the one, the kind of superhero cape. But here is the plot twist. A rival hero shows up wearing orange, Bitcoin. Had I shoved that same 100 grand into BTC at $6,867 back in 2020, I'd be sitting on roughly 1.28 million at today's price, or approximately 1.59 million at Bitcoin's January high. Pretty respectable, right? Absolutely, right? Bigger than gold, right? By a mile as well, but still shy of XRP's January peak, which kind of hints that volatility can crown unexpected champions. Now, before everyone kind of shouts at the screen or types down below, see, crypto is easy, just pick a coin and wait. Let me confess, holding XRP for 5 years felt less like a peaceful yacht cruise and more like strapping into a front row seat to the world's tallest roller coaster, blindfolded, right? Within months of my 2020 purchase, if you will, the SEC slammed Ripple with a lawsuit, freezing US exchanges and sending price charts into a nosedive. Friends told me to bail. Some actually did bail, and I'll admit, there were nights that I refreshed my portfolio, every 15 minutes, stomach twisted like a pretzel, right? Wondering if I've just doomed my hypothetical down payment to a regulatory sinkhole. Meanwhile, gold was steady as grandma's kind of fruitcake. No lawsuit, no late night tweets, just a slow, deliberate climb. That calm can, of course, be comforting until you realize that calm also means inflation is still kind of gnawing away and your overall purchasing power isn't keeping up with the hidden costs of, well, living. The bigger gut punch? Doing absolutely nothing, right? If I'd clutched my Benjamin bills under the mattress, I would have kind of lost 25% of my spending power without a single kind of headline to even warn me. Inflation doesn't shout, doesn't crash, doesn't file lawsuits. It just quietly eats away. Now, it's kind of like a silent termite, right? Colony that's inside your walls, or in this case, wallet, right? And that's the part that we often overlook, right? The choice isn't simply between gold or crypto. Sometimes the loudest risk is the one that looks like no risk at all. And so what's the real challenge here then? It's actually kind of deciphering which store of value actually stores value after fees, fear, and Federal Reserve photocopies have had their way. Now, gold shines in a kind of jewelry store, but it's heavy, hard to liquidate in a hurry, and historically kind of hovers around inflation with kind of a modest premium. Cash feels liquid, but leaks value. Crypto, well, it's lightning fast upside, equally, lightning fast downside, and regulatory kind of landmines absolutely everywhere. Now, anyone who kind of tells you that one asset is always safe is either selling it or hasn't actually lived through a black swan event. So let's unpack the roller coaster bits for XRP. Right, first, the monstrous 1,036% price jump didn't come in a straight line. It kind of staggered through pandemic panic, an SEC lawsuit, 3 crypto bear winters, and the kind of broader skepticism that Ripple's banking narrative would never, actually catch fire. There were months that XRP felt like it was chewing on tin foil. It was painful, it was weird, and leaving kind of a metallic taste of regret. But the narrative that kind of kept resurfacing was actually quite simple. If XRP cracked cross-border payments at scale, its utility could dwarf speculative hype. Now, every time a new partnership or legal update surfaced, the market kind of twitched like a cat spotting a laser dot. And then there's Bitcoin, right? While XRP was battling lawsuits, Bitcoin was busy breaking all-time highs, snagging headlines about institutional adoption, and making kind of laser eye profile pictures that rage on social media, right? It kind of wrote its own hero arc, proof that even in crypto, multiple protagonists can exist, each with their unique battle scars. My takeaway here? Well, diversification is not just a buzzword. It's actually a sanity lifeline. Right? Imagine running both plays, XRP and BTC, against inflation. You'd be cheering from kind of a 2 grandstands at the same race. Now, let's zoom out and talk bigger picture, because percentages on a screen only tell half the story. Right, the US dollar losing 25% of its purchasing power is more than some academic statistic. It's actually the difference between affording a decent starter home and moving further out of town. right? Between buying the kind of fancy Java kind of latte every single morning or switching to office drips, right? Between taking your kids on that once a year kind of beach trip or scaling back to picnics in your local park. Inflation's pinch is real world, not just Wall Street kind of gobbledygook. And so when you see XRP's $1 million figure or Bitcoin's $1.5 million peak, right? The kind of deeper headline is this: certain volatile assets can outpace not just inflation, but traditional kind of safe havens as well. And if, and it's a big if, you can stomach the ride, that ride isn't just measured in charts alone. It's actually measured in sleepless nights, FUD-filled headlines, and the kind of patience to sit tight while regulators, miners, whales, day traders all throw tantrums, that kind of whipsaw the prices. And here is the kicker moment for me. I looked back at my imaginary kind of fork in 2020 and realized that every option felt scary for different reasons. Right? Gold felt safe but slow, cash felt familiar but fading, and crypto felt explosive but chaotic. Right? There wasn't a kind of perfect doorway here, just the kind of courage needed to pick one door and kind of own the consequences of it. And I figure that, something out of risk isn't, the enemy, right? Ignorance of risk actually is. Now, the more that you understand, what you're riding, it's tech, it's legal landscape, it's community, the kind of less likely you are to panic sell at the worst possible moment. So that is why, somewhere along the way, I ditched the lonely investor mindset and plugged into communities that live and breathe this stuff. So, quick plug, if you've ever want a kind of place to swap war stories, chat memes, or just figure out whether the latest headline is actually a big deal, hop into our free crypto Discord via the link that is in the description down below. It's kind of like having a 24-hour group chat of friends who get why you're refreshing, coin market cap at 3 a.m. And so, where does this leave us? The numbers are actually quite crystal clear. 100K in XRP today is equal to $1.13 million, right? Same in Bitcoin, $1.28 million. Same in gold, $202,000, right? The same under the mattress, $75,000 of purchasing power. But the human side, the kind of feeling, the fear, the euphoria, that part's messy. And honestly, that's kind of what makes the story worth telling, right? Anyone can list percentages, but living through them is another beast altogether. Am I saying XRP will keep skyrocketing? No, there's no crystal ball here, right? Just remember, right? It hasn't even hit its former all-time high just yet, while Bitcoin has already rewrote record books. Does that mean that XRP has more upside? Possibly. Could regulators still throw a curveball? Absolutely. But if the last 5 years has taught me anything, it's this, right? Dismissing an asset because it's uncomfortable or unorthodox might just cost you the chance to outrun that sneaky monster called inflation. So, whether you kind of lean towards digital assets, gleaming metals, or that kind of blend of both, right? The mission stays the same. Protect and grow your hard-earned value. Study the charts, but also study yourself, your risk appetite, the time horizon, and of course your stress tolerance. And never underestimate the power of community. Market swings, they feel 10 times lighter when shared with people on the same roller coaster.